listening to the mid.
Okay,
Our bad beginnings are what make us charming. Isn't that true, Wen?
that is true. We're recording now.
Welcome to the mid episode 12.
12. Episode
Ooh,
12.
who got good at keeping track?
You. I'm
Thank you.
impressed. I
That's
forget
right.
now.
Well, how has your week been so far, miss?
It has been good. My gym is just about finished and I started working out yesterday, so I'm very happy about that.
You're also really whiny about your legs.
Yeah, well, they hurt, man. My God, my quads and my glutes are like on fire.
That's a good thing.
It is a good thing.
It means you have a hot ass. All right. Well, we're going to hop right into episode 11. As promised,
12.
we do have episode 12. This one is definitely a bit of a departure, a little bit more personal than some of the past ones have been. Would you like to introduce our guest? Because she's yet again one of your family members.
Yes. Yes, she is. And another one of my very favorite people in the whole wide world. And my cousin. Everybody, please welcome Debbie Fletcher Queen.
Debbie FQ,
Hello.
as the cool kids call her.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Welcome.
It's a good acronym. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, and I really appreciate this. You may be Wendy's cousin, but you and I share a lot in common, especially the events of our past. For me, 6, you in the same wheelhouse of our lives, and we met only probably what, 7, 8 years ago, maybe 9 years ago now, and really bonded very quickly over having very similar situations in our life. And what we're going to talk about today is how we both blew up our lives around the midpoint. Our stories are very similar in terms of timelines and in terms of what we've done and a lot of shared feelings. But again, there are very separate stories. So I really am looking forward to you telling your story. And I'll start off with a little bit of mine and why I wanted you to come in and share this, because I think it's something that maybe not everyone can relate to, but it certainly will shed some perspective on what can happen at midlife. And for me, midlife became a huge point of reckoning. And I know we'll get back to what reckoning in midlife means, but for me, I was reckoning with just being really unhappy. I was unhappy for quite a few years, a lot of contributing factors, one of which was I was in quite an unhappy marriage. And this certainly isn't a venue to slam my ex or do anything like that. It's really just about me and how I was feeling in it. And I was getting to a place where I was a little scared of how I wasn't taking care of myself, of how much I had checked out of my own life, of how much I didn't recognize myself anymore. And you met me sort of just before I made the decision to leave that life. And the next time we had met, I had done it. And shockingly to me, so had you. So I'm wondering if you'll share with us just a bit about what that was like for you, that reckoning of blowing up your own life.
Yeah. Similar. Unhappy. A common law situation. Many years of why am I here? This isn't, but just putting up with it because we had kids. And so I was staying for the kids. I could not, I knew I wasn't happy. I made do, I put up, but I stayed for the kids. And I just couldn't imagine sharing. My stepson Adam, but my son Dawson, I just couldn't imagine sharing. I couldn't imagine leaving and not having him in my life every day. And I've said it a few times that I felt very selfish about feeling that way. It wasn't necessarily the best thing for Dawson.
So what led up? Tell us a little bit about beforehand. You can get as specific as you want or as you're comfortable with, but leading up to that, talk about maybe how you felt. You know what they always say the darkest hour is just before the dawn. So what was your darker hours? What did they feel like for you in your life? How did you feel in your life?
Not heard, not knowing who I was anymore. Just going through the motions. Honestly, it was just going through the motions. There were so many times I'd come home and just go right up to bed and just hide in my bed. I'd stay at work late, hiding at work. I just didn't want to go home and confront, and it felt like a lie. It felt like, yeah, it felt like part of me is just put that behind me. I don't think about that. I try not to think about that, good or bad, right or wrong, about those sensations that I was feeling.
Well,
but
I can totally, that's visceral. I can feel it when you're talking about it. Just that feeling like you're walking through the motions of your life, feeling like you're even putting on enough of a front that a lot of people would think that you're just fine. Maybe the
yeah,
people closest to you would know that you're not, or they've also become so used to this you that you've put out into the world that, maybe you've lost a little shine along the way, but you were still looking like you were coping. Like, certainly I didn't know you obviously before the first time I met you, but as it goes. But when I met you, you seemed solid, and now if I look back knowing what I know, I would have wondered why you were so wise in the way that you kind of spoke with me and counseled me that weekend, because we met on one of our infamous girls' weekends. But at the time, you seemed solid and confident and grounded. So I wouldn't have guessed what you were facing at home.
mm-hmm. Yeah,
Well, and I
I
know,
guess
sorry, go ahead.
well, just that I tapped into what you were experiencing, and I could speak it because I was living it without saying I was living it, I guess. But I think I was conveying to you too that there was some stuff that I was dealing with. So
I definitely felt that we connected on something. I don't think I recognized how true the same sort of feelings and situation were for you. Um, I know for me, a couple of things leading up to it that I look back on now, and I think when I made the decision, they became really important factors because I've done almost like my own therapeutic thing has been to do a bit of a timeline for myself, like, and kind of look at where I was and when I was, I guess at my worst. And it's not like I wasn't functioning. I was functioning. I was going to work. I was mothering. I was, fiercely mothering, doing everything with them. I was not checked out in that regard, but I know I was down. I was really, really down. And one of the things I did is I went to see a therapist. I used my EAP through work, and I think it gave me 3 therapy sessions. And I know, super,
I
but
got sick. I got 6.
well, yeah, she said I could come back for more, but a couple of things she said were things that I carried with me that were real shifts. And one of, I remember when we got to my marriage, she started asking me questions about, like, well, how do you see this playing out? And what do you think you're going to do? And I immediately jumped to my retirement plan. And I was maybe 40, maybe I was 39, 38, 39, somewhere between that and 40. And she just looked at me. She goes, so you're not going to retire for a good 25 years. What do you plan to do in the meantime? And then I didn't know what to say because in my life, I was really looking at this retirement plan. I was going to go live in South Carolina and become a dolphin volunteer and a turtle volunteer. And to me, that was like, okay, well, that's when I will have the life for myself. Right now, I'm living for my kids and I'm living to, work because I was probably like the main provider at that point as well. And I'm just doing this, and then my prize at the end will be living this life when I'm with the turtles and the dolphins and on the beach. And I honestly, that was my self-soothing. I would get through to that point and I would probably be on my own a little bit more because that's what that life would offer me. And she kind of sat back and went, you have enough life left to have a whole new one. And it hit me like a slap in the face. Like I really had never looked at it that way. I looked at it as how to get through, how to survive, where I would find my happiness. And the other thing that happened around that time was I was walking and talking to a friend of mine, and I was telling her how great everything in my life was, with the exception of my marriage. I was like, the kids are doing well. I love my work. I have good friends. I was social. I was feeling good. And I said, maybe my marriage is just the one part of my life that doesn't work. And maybe I just don't get the love story. And maybe that's okay because not everyone wins in every category. And I remember hearing that and thinking about it afterwards and just feeling just an empty pit of, oh my God, I don't get the love story. Like I don't get to have that great love that I always wanted. And I'd always, since I was little, had dreamed about this great, I always thought there would be this phenomenal partnership in my life. And I thought in my marriage that was going to happen when we got through all the hard stuff. And there was a lot of hard stuff. And I thought, oh, if I stand by him through this and this and this, the end result is going to be this incredible connection that nobody can touch. And guess what? That wasn't the story. Um, so when I did finally decide to leave, I looked at it, it really was to many people completely out of left field. I think it surprised almost everyone in my life. And I did it fast and furious. I like to think of it, I really lit a stick of dynamite and I put it in the middle of my family and it rearranged. And following that, I think most people, while they were shocked, they also supported that move. A lot of people, especially my close friends who knew I was unhappy, were really supportive and even celebratory about that decision to get myself back. Where things went very different for me is when I got into a relationship like right away, like right away. And that's when a lot of fallout happened in my life. And I know that is also very true to your story. We have very similar paths in that way. So
Yeah.
how was that for you?
Uh, mine too was a bomb. It was a drop for him, but anybody else around saw it coming.
Yeah.
I heard that consistently. Nobody's surprised. Nobody was shocked. And I respect the not dissing, but there were elements which were obvious for some people to see. And then part of the catalyst aspect of the relationship, the new relationship, was that I didn't think I had it in me.
Yeah.
I didn't think I was worthy. I didn't think I wanted to. And it just started in conversations on Messenger. So
Your family and Messenger.
yeah, but we went to high school together.
Yeah.
So it was a little Hallmarkish too, right?
Yeah. It was a movie of the week in that way, which was lovely.
So is that how you reconnected, like through Facebook?
Yeah, the high school Facebook group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah. And but the bomb dropped, and I went through some stuff. It took a good year and a half of feeling good, but feeling guilty. And I still struggle with the guilt. And it's about the family unit, and it's about just blowing up somebody's life just because I wasn't happy. I went so long in that mode of just making it okay.
Coping.
Why couldn't I just keep going? Right?
It's almost like you were in service to that life, right? You're in service to your kids. You're in service to that commitment that you made to make this family work.
Yeah. And I mean, there's elements of my situation which is different than yours. We weren't married. There was no sort of vow commitment. Dawson knows this, so I don't mind saying it. 5 months into the relationship, I found I was pregnant. So not exactly necessarily a good way to start.
Not so Hallmark.
Not so Hallmark.
Yeah.
Right?
But I think, you give it your best try and you feel, a lot of relationships grow into love. So I can totally understand at that time having the best intentions, and I'm sure that you developed elements of love in your relationship and care, and all of those things were true. What I find really interesting about what you're saying, and in my own experience, is this idea, and I think that this is an issue for women in general, and it's an issue generationally. I hope that it's changing for younger generations, for my daughter's generation, is this idea that we make a commitment and a decision when we're young, from that vantage point of being, I don't know, I was in my 20s when this happened, when I married, and this feeling that we have to stick to that decision, not only when it doesn't serve us, but when it begins to harm us. And I know my decision to stay had started to harm me. I know I wasn't taking care of myself. I was drinking to cope at times. I'd wait till the kids go to bed, and then I would easily have 3, 4 glasses of wine just to numb out, and I went through my major grief moments during this marriage. I lost both of my parents very close together, and I wasn't even, because our marriage came with a lot of survival moments, like
Yeah.
where things were really tense. I didn't process anything during my marriage. I really didn't process grief. I didn't process, really how I was feeling in that marriage. So when I left, similarly, and I know over different things, like that was a huge couple of years for me of processing. And I still think, my grief process, for instance, was probably really stunted when I was grieving my parents. Like there's things that still come out, and not to say your grief is a linear process in any situation, but for me, there's just these overwhelming memories I get now that I think when I was in that survival mode, because my marriage, the whole thing, and even moments afterwards were survival mode. Um, but I think bringing it back to, like, I don't know why or when it was decided that we had to stay with decisions, like why these decisions we make with
Yeah.
our young, not even completely developed brains, then hold us,
It's a societal thing. It's that we see it all around us. Nothing more important than family. The ultimate. You see a man and a woman, and they say, 55 years together, and that's the core of everything. And you just feel like such a failure
yeah.
when that isn't. And it's permeates our society so much.
Well,
Um,
and then stigma around the woman that leaves compared, like if a man, if it was sitting in, if this was like the bro podcast, you'd be slapping me on the back going, what took you so long? Way to go. Like it wouldn't
yeah,
be attached to this
Really
type
though, you
of
think so?
shame.
yeah,
I think that it was
Really?
much easier for men to leave. I think when something
Well,
isn't serving
yeah.
a man, it's more palatable for people.
Okay.
Leaving and changing my children's life, which I did, and then very shortly after, for in my mind, and the guilt that I've worked through is forcing them to live in a blended family situation that they had no say in, right after the trauma they must have had of me leaving their dad, even though if you ask them, they understand why I left. They don't, but the big decision to jump into what I saw and still do see as happiness really offended a lot of people. And like the fallout for me was, from one moment when I had just left and not left, um, and then gotten into a relationship, was, my entire family at that time, because I didn't have parents. My in-laws were my family. They had been my family for over 20 years, and suddenly no one was speaking to me. Like, and which is kind of interesting because everybody was like, yeah, we don't know how you did this for this many years. But then I wasn't allowed to be happy right after. I needed to be single, and I needed to be mournful about the end of my marriage. Well, guess what? I mourned my marriage for half my marriage. I mourned the fact that I didn't have a partner for most of my marriage. I felt alone more than I felt with someone. So for me I didn't feel like it was quick. I know it was quick, but it didn't feel like it was quick for me because I had spent so much time alone in my marriage. The idea that I could have this incredible feeling of someone meeting me at the exact same point I was in my life with open arms was so, like, it blew my mind that I could have that.
I like your point about having grieved the marriage for that length of time because I felt the same. I felt very alone for a long time. So I'd done some sort of processing on the releasing of the relationship. My guilts after the fact are more about the boys and the family and the functions that happened at Christmas and Thanksgiving and how it's awkward now and it's different for them. Like they both, God, they would kill me. They somewhat struggle with anxiety and wanting things to be not a lot, just enough that it, they like things a certain way and they like things to stay the same.
I think
I
that's
changed all.
everyone. I think that's all like that. I don't, I think especially in the face of change,
Yeah, but as a mother and dealing with that from your kids, that's a really hard pill to swallow, right?
it is a hard pill to swallow and
Yeah.
to put into perspective.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. And you've said this to me before, Wendy, and I'm just going to bring it up now because it has helped me get through some really heavy times of guilt because I, like you, have experienced Christmas has never been the same. Um, Family dinners often aren't the same. You have to intentionally carve out so much more. But this also eclipsed the same time that our kids would be turning into adults as well. So some of that
Yes.
awkwardness, some of that growing apart was going to happen. It was certainly
Yes.
amplified by what we've done. Like, I'm not trying to say it didn't change things and make things, it's something we gave them something to process. But I also gave them many, many years of everything I was because I wasn't giving it to my marriage. I gave them everything I had. And when it came finally my turn to have this partnership and this happiness, because guess what, Deb, they were going anyway. Like the kids aren't going to stay with me, nor were yours going to stay with you.
Yeah.
I had to think about that. And I had to think about the fact like this is the next chapter. And I am so glad that I was able, like, I feel like when I look back now, it was almost like out of body that I was able to leave and stay this time because it wasn't the first time I had tried to leave or that I had said I was leaving. Everything at this moment lined up for me from, friends of mine being able to find a place I could afford to move into. Everything told me this was right. Everything is cellular in my body, everything that opened up around me told me it was right. And I am so glad that I didn't let that guilt of what I was feeling around my kids stop me. And I'm glad it didn't stop you either, because what we can offer them now is so much bigger. We can offer them the lesson that it's okay to leave when you're unhappy, that you do not need to be tied to decisions you made 30 years ago if they're not serving you. You've given them a relationship model to look at that is healthy, and you've
Yes.
given them you happy.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've been in therapy for years and, therapists saying, what are you teaching your son? Staying in this relationship where you're obviously not happy. And what are you teaching him? What is he seeing? Right. So yes, exactly. This is better. And Dawson had already was leaving. He'd gone to school. He was coming home. And so that was part of one of the factors leading up to when it happened was me sitting there going, oh my God, they're both out of the house and here I am alone in this relationship, but alone. And it really started the ball
Yeah.
rolling on making that decision to make it happen.
Yeah,
And
you
it
were
really,
faced with what life was going to look like.
yes.
Yeah.
Well, and like I said, like bringing it back to reckoning, like talking about midlife in general, for me, this has been the great reckoning, this time in my life, because you get to a point where for me, I can't speak for everyone, but I became very reflective of the past. And maybe because I was in an unhappy situation, but I really kind of dove deep with myself into how did I get here? Here's all the great things I changed. Like I had found a career that I loved. I had gotten into home care and healthcare and palliative care and all these things that really drove my passion for work. I had, been, like I said, involved with my kids. All of those things were working, but there was this one gaping hole in my life. And really, I spent a lot of time reckoning and yearning for this thing I didn't have and I didn't really know existed. And I think that's really whether it's leaving a relationship or making, a change to a pattern, blowing up your life in terms of your career, trying something new, all of that comes down to reckoning with what you have done up till this point and what you want the rest of it to look like or what you're not willing to bend on anymore too.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And even though I didn't
Yeah.
feel like it at the time, I think that those, like that motivation that I felt bodily to leave was the beginning of me liking myself. Because I can promise you, when I was in the thick of it, I did not like myself. I did not respect myself. Like you said, I didn't feel like I deserved,
Yeah.
this happy.
Yeah.
So, a question to both of you then would be, as an after, well, I guess from before, how has your definition of happiness changed from then to now?
It's more about, for me, it's more about I'm more even keeled and leveled off. I'm not as
Like roller coaster type thing?
yeah,
Okay.
like I used to, I guess, I don't know, I used to peak and then I'd drop, almost manic.
Okay.
Not quite manic, but I just feel more comfortable in my own skin. I feel more content with me. If you call it, I like myself more, maybe.
Oh, I was going to ask, like, do you feel like your confidence has boosted?
Boosted, yes.
Okay.
You know, I still struggle with it,
Mhm.
but I think that's a part of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I still deal with that. Like, but yeah, I'm more calm,
Okay.
more even. I still have my moments. We all do.
Yeah.
Like today was a bad, rough day. So, and it's been a while since I've had one of those because I'm usually getting very good at just rolling with it.
Okay.
You know, yeah. But it was just that kind of a day that everything just sort of went wild.
Yeah.
And so, you know, when I couldn't get onto the call, I'm like, oh my God, here we go. It's just maybe that's not supposed to be having this call, you know. And so I'm still
Panicking
sort of
and-
coming down with that. But generally speaking, I deal with things so much better now than I ever did before. I don't get mad like I used to. I used to get mad,
Okay.
and I don't.
Wow.
I just, yeah, it's just, I just feel more calm and more
centered,
content.
kind of.
Centered, grounded. I know you said that about me, Teresa, that I seem grounded to you before, but
Oh, you
I don't
seem
know.
way more grounded to me now that I know you and
Oh,
now
yeah.
that I know this story. Oh my God, the difference every year that I see, because we really only see each other once a year. We chat here and there in between, but
Yeah.
once a year, and because I go that 360 some odd days in between times, I see such a massive change in you every time. And I just
Yeah.
want to say about the happiness thing too, is it's not a silver bullet. It's not like you suddenly
Yeah.
are immune because you've made this big decision. It's that for me, I am able to self-regulate so much easier now. I was riding the waves of what my husband was in the marriage. Like I literally, if he was having a good time, I was having a good time. If he was having a bad time, I was having a bad time. So when I left, I had distance from all of that, right? And certainly I rode the waves with my kids, especially in the beginning, and even now. I mean, we're parents. We do that. Your kid's having a bad day, you have a bad day. That doesn't change. The bad stuff happening, having really low days, that doesn't change. Everything now is on my terms though. And
Yes.
I get to make different decisions because my life doesn't change in the blink of an eye the way it did when I was married and when I was in an unhealthy situation. I now can distance regulate the contentment I feel at being boring. My life was so unboring in the worst way well, and you can attest to this when like it was 20 years of me riding this massive roller
Yeah.
coaster.
Yeah.
And it felt like someone would grab you by like the shirt collar and whip you, and then all of a sudden you're feeling this, and all of a sudden you have to do this, and you have to be ready to switch on a dime. And your sympathetic nervous system never gets to relax in those situations. So I would say that my happiness is more just contentment and knowing that I think the greatest gift out of all of this for me isn't the relationship, even though I'm happier than I've ever been in a relationship and I feel more listened to and in tune with and respected by and loved. But the biggest gift for me, having done this, is knowing I'm going to be okay no matter what. I know if
Yes.
my relationship ended tomorrow, I would mourn it and I would grieve and I would stand on my feet because I will be fine no matter what. I have done the big thing in my life when it comes to me having to make a decision. I'm not saying I've faced the worst situation, but I know what my abilities are. I know what I'm capable of, and I know I can take care of myself. And that, out of everything, has been the biggest gift of what I've done.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree completely. I'm my core is mine. Nobody can affect me the way it used to get affected before. Now I've done some work too, but it's mine. How I deal with whatever happens to me is mine.
Mhm. And that accountability. Yeah, you're accountable. I can be
Everything.
fully accountable for everything. I can say when I screwed up. I mean, I can look back at my story and I can really point out some things I would probably do a little differently. Right? Because
Yes.
in that moment, I thought, I'm liberating us for myself and the kids, and I'm going to show them very quickly this whole new life. And this is what I should have done. And this is the type of person I should have married. And this is the life I wish I had given you. I didn't necessarily properly take into account, like, they're not going to feel that way immediately. They're not going to be like, oh, isn't this charming? It was horrible for them. Right. And it took me a little, that was my biggest kick in the stomach, was when I was like, I came down from that. But instead of beating myself up years later, like now that I mean I've spent many times beating myself up, but when I look at it now, I also know there was no other way I could have sustained and done this. I didn't leave because of a relationship, but I definitely stayed away because of a relationship. Because in the times when I had left in the past and life was hard and being alone with the kids was hard and I couldn't see a way forward, knowing that I had very quickly cultivated this other life kept me afloat because it also showed me what I was capable of. You can have this. And yes, you can have, like the therapist said, this whole other life. It doesn't mean we don't feel guilty. Like, sure, we're going to feel guilty. And sure, it was never going to be neat and clean. But you know what? My
No.
marriage was never going to end neat and clean. It never was. It was never going to be pretty.
No. And you'd be very unhealthy 6 years out now, more.
Oh my God. I
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
Hard to go back and think it. That's where I'm even trying to talk about what was leading up to it. I can't even, part of me can't even remember it because it's so over there now.
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
which is not a bad thing either. Like having it over there rather than right here.
No,
Yeah.
no, but I still struggle with the holidays. I still struggle with holidays because it's so different now. Getting together with the boys is so different now,
Yeah.
right?
But see,
So much a part
that's
of
where
their life.
I get, like, it was always going to be different though, no matter what, right? With your
Yeah.
kids,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
As they age
I guess the
and
whole thing with, with their dad, right?
okay.
Like family functions, that kind of thing. Like, there is no relationship right now with him and I,
Right.
right? A good friend just passed and Dawson and I were talking and I said, I would like to go to the celebration of life, but I won't because I won't. I
Yeah.
respect it. It was more Phil's friend anyway, but I don't want to create anything
Right.
for that. But yeah, there's that part. Regret's not the word, but I wish like you say, Teresa, you go back and you go, I wish I'd done that a little better. I wish I could have done that a little better. But I also knew who I was dealing with.
Well, and you have to let yourself off the hook a little bit too,
Yeah.
right?
You have to do a little bit of that. There's some of that, right?
Well, and you have to let yourself off
Yeah.
the hook a little bit too, because
If you're hearing some serious growling right now, it's my two bitch cats duking
are they
it
going to
out.
fight? You've got a literal
Yeah.
cat fight in the background.
Oh, yeah.
It's not us.
Oh.
There they are. And it's all about Cassie wants food, so she stands in front of Tabby, and Tabby growls, and then we go for Cassie. So anyway,
It's a standoff.
I'm distracted because I'm like, they're doing it again. I have this conversation. Sorry.
That's okay. So, in terms of the things that changed, like I mentioned that my relationship with my in-laws was probably one of the biggest impacts, right? And like you, I've gone through times where I would like to have been involved in things like my father-in-law is not well, and I know that parts of my professional life would help in that situation because I could help him navigate a bit of care and help them advocate for some different things. And I feel like a deep sadness because he was a phenomenal father-in-law and I can't honor him in that way. Um, and just like the level of alone that I sometimes feel because my family had shrunk and I had really adopted, my ex's family was my family. So there's some, it was
Freedom.
never going to come without some sacrifices, right? Like your happiness is key and we did the things that we needed to do in order to focus on our happiness. But there are prices. Like I've lost friends that couldn't wrap their heads around what I had done and felt like there was dishonesty or that I did things in a way that they weren't happy with. And rather than, saying, but at least you're happy, they weren't able to stick around. And I didn't want them there in any other capacity but to celebrate what I had chosen to do. Um,
Right.
what are things and kids aside, that have changed for you that, you can't change back and you kind of just accept?
Um, I mean, family too. It was a big family, and there were some good relationships. There's a couple that I've maintained, but most of them, no. There's no contact for, so that for sure. Um, just being in the same town. I know that it's odd. Yeah, just that, I think. The family and the being in the same town.
Being in the same town
Yeah.
is tough. We're not anymore. We were literally around the corner from each other for a while. And when we bought this house, because my partner and I now of 6 years, yeah, 6 years, um, we both left our marriages within a time frame, and we had to make a decision about where to live and financially and what we wanted to offer the kids. And we were very sure, like I knew this was who I was going to be with. There was no question for me. And you know, as sad as that might be, because you're looking at two families breaking down, it's not because of it, but it's yeah, the way I like to think of it is that so when we both decided to leave our marriages separately, it wasn't like there was a lot of shock and awe from our friends and the people surrounding us. But when we got together very quickly, the whole story, then the focus was that we got together. It was no longer, it's almost like the 20 years of unhappy marriage and the strifes that both of us went through, totally different, separate things. And his is none of my business. But it's like that all disappeared because the scandal and the most interesting thing about it is that we were suddenly together. And then there's all this speculation. And then there's, all of this people talking about it. And there was some overlap because, we met because our kids played sports together and we had a friendship long before we got together. And stuff came up about our marriages. We were both going through stuff and we bonded over that. And when we started dating afterwards, it moved very quickly and we decided to move in very quickly. And that's probably the one thing, like if I could go back, I say
Mm.
this, but at the same time, I don't know how it would have worked. Like I think at this point, this many years later, I'm willing to sit back and go, you know what? It wasn't pretty. People got hurt. I don't ever relish people getting hurt,
No.
but it had to happen the way it happened. It literally was blowing up our lives and rearranging our families. And I don't know what else to say about it other than that. Like but the focus again, I think where things fell and why maybe your family dynamics with his family get muddied is that people have forgotten all of a sudden that you had how many hard years of a marriage. Now it's all about the fact that you found happiness and he hasn't, or the way that you went about it, or that, it's so much easier to focus on something that's sensational than it is
Yes.
on the hard part, because it's very
Yes.
easy for the person that's on the other
Yeah.
side of that marriage to become the victim, right?
Absolutely. It's in some ways, I've said this a few times. In some ways, it's harder for the person that leaves.
Oh, frig, 100% it is. Everyone
It's
rallies around the leavee.
yes, exactly, exactly. And it's very interesting when that sensation that I felt.
You're doing the
Yeah.
harder thing. It is the harder thing to do to suddenly go, this is not working for me and I can't do it anymore.
Having said that, I've had many, many good friends, yourselves included, you know, how how brave I was.
Oh my God.
How brave. And I would say that I say that to you And I would say that to any woman or person that was in that situation where they were going to blow somebody's life up, but they knew they had to. They knew they weren't happy, healthy, and that's brave.
It's changed
It's
my
brave to
perspective
do
on
that.
people that leave in different ways too. Like I used to be kind of judgier around people that left their kids. And now I've listened
Mhm.
and heard so many stories about people who have done that very unpopular thing. And maybe when that's more what I'm talking about. Like when a man leaves and the woman stays with the kids, that's like the popular thing. But there's situations where that doesn't happen and the woman is really villainized for leaving. But now that I know what it took for me to do something, where I was, how I was feeling, what I was scared of, the level of complacency I had gotten to in my life that frightened me. I can now empathize with people that leave in different situations and think I have no idea, and I'm certainly not going to stand back and judge them for having done that. It's opened up my perspective because I think you kind of also cling to that title, the good wife and the good mother and the person that stands by. And you get lauded for that too, right? Like in my situation,
Oh,
my ex-husband wasn't well. And so I was such a good wife because I stood by and wasn't I a saint? I probably played into that. I was like, yeah, I'm fantastic. Look at me go. Doesn't hurt that my name's Teresa. Like it's all,
geez, I never thought of
yeah.
that.
But so it was, it blew people's minds when I chose something for me.
You pulled a Christia Freeland.
Well, yeah, let's not
I
get
know.
political.
Uh,
Well, I'm glad we did what we did. And I can't tell you, like, the things show up in your life when you've done the right thing by you. Like I said, things open up. And for me, connecting with you and having someone with that shared experience, it has been such a gift to me. And I'm so glad that now we have this opportunity to work it out in this format and share that experience because it's not been easy, but it was always right.
well, I mean, the ripple effect of that, our last girls' weekend, there was wonderful conversation, and you helped me so much with perspective on walking through life after the separation and creating a new relationship with my son. Like it was like we've talked about that. Like they'll just say, "Yeah, I'm good," and not reply to the text 3 days later. It's like, how do you get that relationship back again?
Well, and again, like to Wendy's point, and Wendy has been an amazing help for me, letting me see when I'm in that mess of, oh my God, it's me, I've done this, and my
Yes.
son is moved. And Wendy will go, he's also 19. He's also like my other son's 23. She's like, my sons don't want to talk to me either. And it's really not
Yeah.
about you. And it kind of takes you out of that thing. It's not all about us. None of this is all
No.
about us. Our kids are that age and they don't want everything to do with us. It's not to say that there's no impact, but it's to say that we can't look at every text that's not returned and think it's because I left my marriage, right? Like it's
Yep. Yep.
No. And it's like I told you before, the way I look at it is the relationships may not be what I want, but it's what they're willing to give. And I have to change my expectations to go around that. And things get better that way. Like, I mean, I even had Daniel just pop by today. He had a reason he was going to print something, but then he stayed for like 2 hours and just chatted. You know what I mean? So it's like, I find
Yes.
when I'm
a really
more
good way to
willing to
put
let
it.
them lead,
Well,
things
they
tend
almost feel
to,
that, don't they? They almost feel that sort of clinginess.
yeah.
Whereas if you
Well, the
lighten it
shame
and back,
thing,
I think
right?
so.
Like we've
Yeah.
talked a bit about the shame
Yeah.
thing in the
I
past.
do.
We didn't talk about it too much today, but the shame that goes along with the guilt, it's not healthy to put that on them either. And I think
yeah,
sometimes when we're always trying to explain why we did what we did and please understand, and I never wanted to hurt you, blah, it's a heavy weight to put on them. And I know that I've
yes,
made that mistake with my own son, particularly my eldest son, because I really felt like that relationship was probably a bit harder to repair. And it was, the one that I thought would fully understand everything I did. And we had a really tough time. And it's what I wish I had listened to Wendy a bit more during that time, but I also wish that I had like I know it's really cliche, but when I remind myself that it's temporary and that families are so strong, like families weather so much and they come back and they rebuild. And we were never told that we had to get it all right and all perfect and be these perfect mothers and these perfect wives and like we were going to screw it up one way or another. And
Yeah.
kids take their breaks and they come back and they always come back.
Yeah.
And it's been, a learning curve for both of us. And I think when you do something like that, you're also a bit of a different person, right? Like you've shed a lot. And all of a sudden you're introducing yourself to your kids as this new person who can have a new
Yes.
loving relationship and be, oh my God, a sexual adult and like have all like you're this whole new person to them and it freaks them out. But it doesn't mean that there's no relationship to be had.
Right. It's just different.
It's just
And so what
different.
happens? Yes, and you have to.
And you'll get these great moments.
Yeah, they almost have to like learn who this new person is too, right? Like give them a second to just like, okay, like it's not necessarily a bad thing if they step back, right?
That's so
It's
true.
just more
just
give them the
different.
space to kind
It's
of
so
absorb
different
that,
from what they've
you know?
had, and now they have to adjust. And so
Yeah.
do we. So do we.
So I have a question for you, Wendy, because you're in a long, loving relationship and there's no need to blow up your life, certainly. But you've watched us and you've known Deb, obviously, since you were born, and you've known me since you were 7, and you've watched our whole lives and you watched me, you know, from a distance in my marriage, and you've certainly watched Deb and hers, and you kind of as a friend have to walk some careful steps when you see your friend or your cousin unhappy because if we chose to stay in those relationships, you'd still have to,
Yeah.
you'd have to say kind things even if you didn't mean them. So what's it been like from your perspective, like, to watch this?
Well, I can honestly say for both of you. Okay, so Deb, for you, I always felt, well, not always, but I mean, over the past, 10, 15 years, there was always an aura of like, I don't want to say sadness, but a little bit of sadness. And even though you were always like super happy and everything, like I tend to pick that up in people. And I've always noticed that. And then post reckoning, I find it's almost like you took one hell of a deep breath and it just washed away. Like I find your aura is so much happier. And I'm not saying aura
Yeah.
isn't like woo woo, but you know what I mean? Like your being just, it's completely different. Like it's just two different people completely. And it's wonderful. And I just want to take this moment to just say that like I am so fucking proud of you. Like you are awesome and an inspiration. And I think what you did was so incredibly brave. And kudos to you because not a lot of people can do it. And yeah, it just amazed me. And Teresa, for you, you were kind of the opposite. You weren't, well, you did have an aura of sadness as well, underlying, but you were just always on. You were on, on, on. You had to be on all the time. You had to be doing something all the time. There was no like happiness and boredom, like you mentioned. And it was just go, go, go. It was almost like chaos, right? You were just like like a tornado inside of you type of thing. And after the fact, that's just all gone. Like I can have a conversation with you and know that you're 100% listening. Whereas before you used to listen to me, but I think there was just so much going on in your brain. I didn't feel that you could absorb it. Do you know what I'm saying?
No, for sure. I was constantly in survival mode and I couldn't
Yeah.
take in, I
Yeah.
don't think I could be valuable to myself or anyone else to the fullest degree of my ability when I was in that space, for sure.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
sure.
exactly.
It's
And I'm
made me a
seeing a
better person.
completely
But 100%
different.
it's
Yeah.
made me a better person. It's made me better
Yeah.
in my life, in my job, as a friend. It definitely has. And what I think, we should close this out with just say if anyone is hanging into a situation, and I'm not saying a relationship, I'm not saying if you're teetering on a decision and you really feel your soul is suffering, like if you feel that you are diminished and you feel that, this
Trapped.
complacency, because for me, it was just this feeling of complacency. And I surrendered to this feeling of complacency for so long. I really would hope that people know and talk to people that have done the opposite to find out what life is like on the other side. And it's not that it's always easy, and it's not that there's no, there's consequences to how we do things, and do we do them perfectly? Absolutely not. But my God, the rewards for listening to yourself and the rewards for doing something completely outside of your comfort zone for the greater good, it's so worth it.
Yeah, and the proof is in the pudding. I mean, both of you. And Teresa, it's the same thing to you too. Like, you absolutely amaze me going through that and suffering the losses that you suffered along the way as well with friends and whatnot. You truly, truly are an inspiration. Like, you guys, your strength is overwhelming. Really, it really is.
Well, thank you. And Deb, thank you so much for being willing to share this. It's not easy to share. And, we're certainly a little bit guarded in these stories because there's a lot of people whose opinions aren't necessarily, glowing of what we've done, and knowing that, but still, going forward, talking about it is that bravery that I see in you, that I hope we both, I know we both have. And I thank you so much for being able to come on and share and be vulnerable. Like, talk about vulnerability. I was really afraid of this in a lot of ways because we have to be vulnerable in order to completely convey the story.
Yeah. Well, thanks you.
Deb.
Thank you.
All right, Wen, do you want to do the housekeeping?
So if you have any questions or comments, or please send us a question. This is a no question episode. We will read the questions that we received on the next episode. You can email us at themidconversations@gmail.com. Instagram and YouTube, our handle is @themid_podcast. Our Facebook page is @midpodcast. And our website is themidconversations.wixsite.com/podcast. Please subscribe and you will get an email notification every single time we release a new episode.
And next week or 2 weeks? I know you're getting so good at it.
Next week, no.
Next week
off. We are off for March break.
Okay, yes. So we will see you with your question in 2 weeks tonight.
That's right.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Love you, ladies.
Love you.
Love you. Thanks, Deb.
The mid.